code to buy my I Love Kai t-shirt. But before that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started talking about pro-level Studio PREVIZ and the agility and compatibility of iClone, and how I utilize both of these things and different feature sets in iClone to work on very high-level projects such as the ones that Kai mentioned and many others over the years that iClone has allowed me to really take full control of my characters, cameras, and being able to develop previz and postviz requires that. So we'll go ahead and get started. Even though it does says iClone 6, here we're actually going to be looking at iClone 7 our Beta 2, and we're going to be going over some stuff in that will not be in iClone 6, but basically every one of the features and methods that I showcased today you can achieve in iClone 6. You just don't have the benefit of having the full camera system that we'll be showcasing today until iClone 7. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So thanks for joining me for this live discussion to explore techniques for creating our pro-level Studio PREVIZ, and we're going to be focused on compatibility first. So why choose iClone for your previz tool to begin with? Why would we turn to large studios and high-level projects and say, hey, we're going to bring in a real-time animation tool like iClone to meet your needs for your production? Well, first, it's the industry standards. We're compatible with Maya, Max, Cinema 4D, ZBrush, and many other formats, including the 3DS, OBJ, FBX Alembic, and BVH motion formats, and many of the common formats that you'll find in other workflows when you bring iClone on board. Pipeline tools are a major asset to me because obviously we're taking a lot of this in and out of iClone. So being able to import and export 3D assets, and what are 3D assets? They're characters, props, anything that we're going to have in our scene, and of course cameras and motion are a big part of the overall workflow. 3D video compositing in iClone really supports my needs quite a bit when working with producers and directors, because we can drop plates into our background, and we can do that very simply. Some of the fundamentals that we'll be going over today will show you how to do that, and then you can take that and drag and drop videos directly onto the background for a full view of that layout, or you can of course make those into geometry by just simply holding Control when you drag that to the viewport. We'll be taking a look. Mocap editing and streaming data onto a human IK rig and animating that in real time is a major asset for me, and being able to be compatible with the workflow of other mocap artists or other directors' visions. And we'll talk about where those visions come from, how they originate in usually storyboard format. Video and image sequences are something else that we use quite often for output to be edited back into whatever the production is, and so it's very handy that iClone offers that compatibility for the overall workflow with the rest of the external team once you are done with your animation in PREVIZ. So the agility of iClone is also a major selling point for why use iClone to develop PREVIZ. And one of the things that make iClone such an agile tool is it really is a visual communication tool. And so we quickly convey thoughts and concepts between large groups and small groups of people that are usually found working on high-level productions and doing pro-level work. This is a quick collaboration with production crew and key influencers. That could be producers, that can be directors, that might be the director of photography. We'll talk about why that's important. And then also to gather the feedback from these groups and respond with rapid results. So it's very much about speed and why use iClone, because it's fast and it's simple for a lot of these concepts to be developed. Real-time rendering also, as we all know, that are old iCloners, and for you new iCloners out there that might be joining us, real-time rendering allows us to simply hit play and review animation and revisions immediately. So with a real-time animation tool such as iClone, when you create these revisions, when you create these edits, when you take in that feedback, you have an ability to review that automatically. And of course, creating new is another strong point in the agility of iClone, and that's rapid prototype development, which allows us to create and share new concepts. So character generation, I'm sure you're fully aware that is a center point or a pillar of what iClone offers, and both Character Creator and iClone are used heavily in this process. So character generation for fully rigged and animation ready characters in minutes is again a speed and strength asset for our agility. Set layout tools allow us to import, create, and export cameras and lights and things like that we're going to need for some of the purposes of going out of iClone and in some cases coming in. So without further ado, we'll talk about what you guys will get out of this webinar and the takeaways that you're going to be able to have after we go through this. And I'll be going relatively quickly through a lot of the fundamentals, which are going to be kind of old hat to maybe some of the viewers out there, but to some of you, hopefully you'll learn some new concepts. But we'll have character animation that will be adding a character and animating that into a scene using motion capture. Video import, where we're also going to use a video file as a background or a prop for us to be able to line up our mocap and talk about why that's important. Shot selection is very big in PREVIZ because you might have one shot that may be determined through your storyboards, and the director might want 5 or 10 shots, or you know, at least shots for them to be able to choose from. So being able to choose those angles and settings from custom cameras is very important. Look, dev, and effects is something we'll take a look at. A lot of times directors are not looking so much at the final output or looking to see all of your effects on, but we can use iClone to create simplified looks in the scene to help the focus maintain on the character animation and the shot itself. Rendering, how to locate and identify the right settings for output. So if we're going out in image sequences or we're going out in full video, we're going to be taking a look at that. And then, of course, as Kai mentioned, our live Q&A. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started, and I'll let you take a look at our PREVIZ example here. And I have that here. And we'll take a look at a couple of different things. So this is what we're going to be creating in this particular webinar in order to create the shot that is going to be based on notes from our actual storyboards. So this is our content that we've also used from the Reallusion content store. And again, I'll play that one more time so you can get a good look at this. And we're using all character animation and motion capture to create this scene. And we're going to build this entire scene inside of our webinar tonight. Also, we're going to be taking a look at some of the behind the scenes and how we build some of this, and we'll take a look at our motion capture demo. Oh, and it's not going to open for me there. 1 second. And we'll basically be talking about how we're going to take this demo and create it in iClone 7 as well. And we'll let you take a look at that and see how this is going to come together. So as you can see, I'm using a regular gaming-ready laptop and a full Neuron suit to get my character animation. And as you can see, this is done on set for a feature film where we've got a mocap actor in our fractal suit, and we also have the Neuron above and beyond that for our capture. And you can see that we're doing this in real time, and we have the ability to direct the actor. We have the ability to talk more about how we want him to move, how we want him to react, and what part of the storyboard that we're actually going for. And you can see here we've got our slam, and that's what we're going to be using. Also, you can see that we've got our green PREVIZ skeleton in here, and we'll talk a little bit more about why I'm using that to build this particular project. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump in on those. And we'll do so in iClone 7. So iClone 7 Beta 2 is what we're going to be producing these in, and you can see I've already got my image layer set up here. This is just a simple image layer that I've saved and double-click to add to that scene. But we're also going to talk about how we've actually created all of this motion. So coming in from our Access Neuron production suite, which is going to be our motion capture product, you can see that we've already captured that motion as you saw in the product demo, and we've got a visual cue here that we use inside of our motion capture in order to give us what we call the Gator Chomp, so we know exactly when that's starting. Think of it as kind of like the clacker board that one would use. And so you can see that here's our motion, and we're going to utilize this motion to stream over to iClone utilizing the Perception Neuron plugin. So what we can do at any given time for that is just stream that over using this plugin, and then we can save that file. For time purposes, we're going to go ahead and not show that full process, but we've already got that saved in our scene, so we're just going to apply that motion to our character. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and grab our witness camera. So it's very important that if you're using a witness camera, that you set it up in a way that you can utilize that inside of iClone or another tool that is beneficial to your animator. Okay, so in this example you can see that I'm just going to drag and drop this over to my viewport. I'm going to go ahead and use Ctrl G to toggle off my grid here, and now at any given point in the project you can drag and drop this video, and we can locate this on the timeline. Now you can open up your timeline using hotkey F3, and that video background will be right here on your 2D BG video checkbox. And you can see that's dragged that into our project, and it's here at frame 1. So if we click play in iClone to review that, you can see that now our video is playing as our full frame background. So here's our Gator Chomp, and you can see that our animator is very easily able to view what the character's proportion is supposed to be, what his motion will look like in real time, and we're just going to go ahead and back this project up a little bit and play that from the beginning. So in order to review this, we can go ahead and strike Spacebar to review, and then where we find our action occurring, we can always set our in here. So I can bring this cursor over using my left click and little green triangle here for my in on the bottom of the playhead, and then of course start our project there, or our rendering there should we want to render this. We then can move on to adding our character to the scene. This is very simple inside of iClone, and again fundamental for some of you older animators out there that have used iClone before, but we'll talk a little bit about the simplicity of the iClone user interface and how that agility makes it fast and easy for us to use. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to visit the second icon here under our Content Manager, and you can see that you have two different tab selections, both custom and template. Anything that you purchase or download from the iClone Content Store or the Aleutian Marketplace is going to be found here in your template folder. However, if you make custom changes to any of these avatars and save them, you'll find that in your custom tab selection. As you can see, for our webinar purposes tonight, we have our 3 avatars here already. So if I double click to add my skeleton into the scene, that's going to add that at the 000 location, or the true world axis. And you can see that's going to come in with my T-pose. Now I've already got this saved, but first what I want to do is I want to kind of determine the camera angle for this as well before I apply the motion. So we can do that using a variety of camera tools that we have available to us in both iClone 6 and 7. And you'll find those here at the top. So you see that we have Z for zoom, X for pan, and C for orbit. You'll also notice that those are corresponding with your keyboard beside each other, so that makes it very easy and fast for you to toggle between these features. And so I'm going to use Z, and I'm going to zoom. And also, when zoom is selected, you can right-click and automatically orbit. So it's kind of nice that if you have these tools selected for pan or zoom, all it takes is a simple right-click to toggle between the two tools. Now I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm also going to use another feature that I like in iClone, especially for reviewing with video, because again, iClone comes in as a 60 frame per second project, and most producers and directors are going to be working at a different FPS. A lot of times, commonplace, you'll come in to contact with 24 frames per second. And what we can do in order to view that is switch over to by frame. Now, this is not going to change our frame rate or make it to where, you know, this is an instant solution one-to-one for our background video, but it will give us a better example of just exactly what those frames will be for even a 24 FPS video that's being brought in. So if we switch to by frame here and then select play, notice that our camera and film background is going to play in a step frame motion. So we're going to go back to the beginning of our project, and with our character selected and any asset that you have selected inside your project itself will be visible by this yellow bounding box. So we know at a glance inside of iClone right away what the active element is. So we're going to go back over into our motion that we've already saved, again coming out of Access Neuron. So this is going to be the exact motion that we've captured from our video reference in our witness camera, and we've streamed that over to iClone utilizing our Perception Neuron plugin, and then we've saved that motion for time constraints tonight already in our custom folder. So if we scroll down, and in the motion folder selection, you can see I've got a few different ones here. And for our webinar, we're going to go ahead and double click our webinar mocap and apply that to our avatar. So now what we want to do is we want to time out and line up where our Gator Chomp actually commences, so we have a good reference of where the video and the motion should line up together. So you can see here our character again is holding his arms down now, and our mocap actor, his arms are coming down as well. And we've got his feet just generally aligned, because again we're not necessarily looking for perfect alignment. We just want to use the witness camera to reference the character movement. So go ahead and select play here once again, and you can see now our motion begins to appear on our character. And what we want to do for this is use one of my favorite icons inside of iClone on the timeline, which is the second one located from the top left, or Object Related Track. The reason I like this icon is because anything that we have selected in our scene corresponding with this bounding box will automatically bring that element to the timeline once selected, should you have Object Related Track checked on. So it's pretty convenient if you have a pretty complex scene in order to quickly bring that asset to the timeline. So now we have our 2D background video that we've found on our timeline, and also here's our motion. So inside of iClone, because it is a nonlinear editor, what we have the ability to do is go ahead and zoom out using Hotkey minus, and we can view our tracks or our clips or our keyframes on our timeline and have full editable capability in order to line that up with our video. So you can see as I left click and scrub that I can scrub my motion, but in order to see that with the video I need to actually select play. That way we actually get both of those motion and video going at the same time, and we'll find kind of the right alignment here. And there's going to be close to it. So we're going to back up our webinar mocap slightly on our timeline in order to time this more with our witness camera, and again select play for review, and probably need to drag it back just a little bit more here. You can see we have our director's fingers coming up into our screen. Yep, there we go. So we're starting to get that motion here. So we want to again try to time this out to where we have kind of a good one-to-one solution for what our character and our avatar is doing, both in the witness camera, and we're very close here. So I'm just going to go a little bit further back. And what we just want to do is isolate the area where the character is going to line up, and we have a good one-to-one ratio. So we can do that here, and we'll go ahead and utilize this motion later on our second avatar, which is going to be our ape or gorilla avatar in our scene. So what we want to do is just make sure that, and there's our point. So that's another good reference area for us to kind of look at. So we'll align that and get our chomp. There it is. So he actually did two here. So let's line that up again. And then we'll go ahead and move forward in our scene. So that's getting better, getting closer. And now what we want to do is we just want to kind of align that motion where he starts to drop his arms down here. So once we have this all together, we can go ahead, and you can see that we're getting very close here, and we can set this up to be successful for our next phase of our production, which is where we're just simply going to utilize this motion. I think we're very close at this point, so we'll go ahead and take a look. As you can see, in by frame mode, we're moving kind of at a one-to-one with our character animation and our motion. Now, if we want, we can actually utilize things like zoom and scale in order to fake our camera angle or our perspective. Now, should we want to do this, we can do that using another camera instead of our preview camera, because your preview camera is your working camera in your scene. So what we want to do is we want to set up another camera, and we can do that by coming up to Create here at the top, which is going to be our third text selection, and we're going to select Camera. And now you can see that we have Camera 0 on our camera name here in the Modify panel on the right. And we can go ahead and set a keyframe for this camera at any given time. We also can access this camera through the Scene Manager. And you can see if we select on our Scene Manager, we have that here under our camera portion of the Content Manager itself. And we can also bring that up onto the timeline using, again, Object-Related Track. And we can view the transform keyframes by checking on the transform checkbox, which will activate the transform track. And we can quickly use some of our new camera settings, and in iClone 6 even, some of the older stuff, to quickly jump down to our transform section of the Modify panel. And what I like to do is just simply make a quick up and down edit to move or rotation, and as you can see, that's going to set a keyframe onto our timeline at that point. So when our character begins to move forward, if we select play, we can easily move the camera in order to line this up should we need this for review later. It's not something that is a must or something that you might have to do in order to get your motion. You're basically where you need to be with that at this point. But it is nice in order to showcase your work to the director for review, or to the director of photography possibly for camera angles and that sort of thing. So now what we want to do is let him get into the foreground here. And what I'm going to do is just utilize my zoom tool and my pan tool and also my orbit tool. And you can see that if you select orbit, one tricky thing about iClone is it will orientate to whatever you have selected. So you can see our camera is still selected, or is the active element in the scene. If I select my Stickman PREVIZ skeleton here and then orbit, you can see that the camera will orient around whatever the object is that is selected directly in your scene. So this is very handy. So we can go ahead and kind of begin to align this. And now you can see if I select play once again that we're getting more and more of a one-to-one performance with our witness camera and the timing of that. So this is great because we can begin to perfect this, and again, for sake of timing, we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to reload this project and let you take a look at what some of these edits look like after you have completed this process. And so we'll jump back into this project, and again, I'll let you go ahead and have a look at this in real time. So actually you can see here we've lined up our avatar, we've got our witness camera and everything in perfect alignment with the character motion, and we're utilizing this again for preview reference for the previs that we're going to be developing. So the front end of this for motion is usually pretty complex because, again, you have to have some way to capture your motion, whether that is with a inertia-based motion capture suit or another piece of hardware such as a Microsoft Kinect or something like that, in order to achieve getting that character motion or that actor true human motion out and into iClone. And for this, we've done just that. But the story actually begins, and normally productions begin with sharing something much more simple to create than our motion capture setup here and our witness camera, and that is with our storyboards. So we'll take a look at the 3 storyboards that were created for this. So you can see first here we have our actor and our gorilla, and we can see that normally we have a couple of different things that are also going to be included with our storyboards. First being the action of the actual character in question. So in this case it's going to be our gorilla. And our director's given us notes saying that the gorilla is going to advance towards the actor, and then also showcasing that with a red arrow sketch here. And then along with that, we also have camera information, which is our camera pushes in slowly. So you can see that with our blue arrow, and that's letting us know that this is a moving camera, not a static camera shot. We're going to set that up in iClone 7.2 beta as well. So now we can see that the gorilla in our second panel grabs the actor with both hands, and again our camera is continuing to push in, so this is one continuous shot. Storyboard 2 showcases that our gorilla lifts our actor off his feet and then slams him down to the ground with both hands with a kind of a violent or a hard slam. And again, our camera continues to push in slowly for this. And for Storyboard 3, you can see that we have some alternate action with our gorilla, and that is that he's continuing to look down and then looks up as the camera pushes in slowly and then eases to a stop in a close-up. So these are very common notes that you might receive from your director or from your producer in terms of how the shot selection is supposed to pan out for the director of photography. And the reason that PREVIZ is so important is that you're giving real-world camera information that we now can provide with iClone 7 to the director of photography, letting him know if we're using a specific brand or style of camera and a specific focal length, that we're going to actually be able to achieve this, and it's not just a concept design. It actually is going to be something that we are going to be able to produce and recreate inside of a production environment, and then of course give that data back over to the director and the director of photography for use on a film or production. So what we'll do now is we'll begin to actually create this scene, because back in iClone 7 we've already got our motion that we're going to need. We know that this is going to be the motion that we're going to use, even though it's not at the same angle that the director has specified in our storyboards. We're going to be utilizing this motion in the creation of the rest of our scene. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and start a new scene, and I'm not going to be saving my project. And I'll also go ahead and use my grid to turn that back on, Hotkey G, in order to activate that. And I'm going to go into my iClone content library to create a couple of different things. Another thing that iClone is very, very flexible and has a strong agility in creating is, again, scene assets, and we'll be able to create that utilizing Reallusion content. The first thing I'm going to bring in is actually on our 5th tab here, or our Set tab from the top of the Content Manager, and that's going to be a terrain. We want our characters to have a surface to walk on or interact with, and in this case we'll actually be using foot contact for some of that. And so we're going to bring in a medium mesh terrain, or just a regular height map, in order to create this. And we'll use our Butte in order to bring that into the scene. So now you can see if I rotate my camera around, we've got a little bit of a jungle type atmosphere already being created, and we want to go a little bit more hilly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch that over to our hill option. So you can see that we can quickly make changes on the fly to the entire set and environment. I'm going to go ahead and toggle my grid back off so you can see that. And I'm just using my orbit tool on my preview camera in order to left click and drag and showcase the terrain that we've placed into the scene. This is a simple terrain, and we're going to go ahead and utilize a couple of other things to make this a more complex set design in itself. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and pull our camera back, and you can see that we have a small hill that we're coming up on here, and this is going to be a good location for our shot. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to go ahead and bring our other avatars into our scene. But instead of double-clicking those, I'm actually going to drag and drop those directly onto our terrain. Since iClone does a great job of recognizing the terrain map, what we can do is we can actually drag and drop our characters directly onto any point on this terrain, which makes it very convenient if you're dealing with a large-scale model or large-scale set. So you can see here's my castaway avatar that we've created using iClone's character creator. And then we also have a gorilla that we're going to drag and drop, which is created by one of our certified content developers and is accessible via the Aleutian content marketplace. And you can see both are coming in their regular T-pose. Now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and establish our character motions. This is going to be something that we want to determine on the front end of the project because we're going to be setting up a couple of transform keyframes in order to account for this. So we're going to first, with our ape or gorilla selected, we're going to go back into our custom motion folder that we've already streamed our motion to. Now if we've made any changes in the first part of the process in our actual witness camera portion of the production, then you'll want to go ahead and save that motion once again, and then of course all of your edits will be maintained in that motion file itself. And we can come over and into the third icon, or the little running man icon at the top of the content manager. We can again grab this mocap. So I've made a couple of edits to my mocap. We're going to go ahead and call that our gorilla mocap, and we're going to double click on that. So now at the beginning of our scene, you can see that if I select play, I have my whole motion capture file here. So there's our Gator Chomp, and we're only going to be utilizing a portion of this. So I don't even want my hand point or anything like that, even though the spot that we're looking for is here with our lift. And so what I want to do is I actually want to trim this motion and edit it even further. It makes it very easy for the agility of iClone to allow you to do so. And what we're going to do is we're going to find that point in the project, and really kind of just a little bit of walk cycle will be utilized. Also notice that our characters are interacting with the ground that they're walking on if we select foot contact, which we have that checked on here. So the terrain itself will bend the character's knees if we wanted to have him lean down more using our transform keys, and doing that using hotkeys Control plus Shift plus down arrow. You can see that the character's knees will bend accordingly. First though, we want to edit our motion, so we're going to go ahead and delete our transform keyframe. And this looks like a pretty good spot to go ahead and cut it. So we can highlight any motion clip and right-click that on the timeline in order to break or split this motion. And you'll see that that will automatically break this into two different motion clips on the timeline itself. And we can go ahead and select the front end of it and delete that altogether. Now I'm going to drag the remaining portion of my motion over to frame 0. And so now my character is ending up in a spot more like this. So our gorilla is going to start his motion here. He's going to grab, he's going to slam, and he's going to look up. And that's really the basis for the motion that we're going to need for the rest of our shot. But we also need character interaction. For this, we've also used perception neuron to create a B motion, or if this is our character A motion, our character B reaction motion. And we've got a couple of different things that we can use for that. But for this, we're going to go ahead and use a custom motion. So if I double click on that and apply that to my active asset in the scene, you can see that now our character has his distressed motion, and I'm going to use hotkey E to rotate our character directly by left clicking and dragging. And now our shot is becoming more like our reference that we saw at the beginning of our webinar already. And we're going to use a couple other methods to quickly have these two characters interact. And we've crashed iClone 7, but that's okay. We'll go ahead and bring that back up. And iClone quickly will reload, and we have our shot here that we're looking for in the end, so we know what we're trying to achieve, again, based on our storyboards. And we also know from the video reference at the beginning of the webinar that we're actually going to be able to get to that point using custom camera movement. So one beautiful part about iClone, that is a more recent feature set that's been installed in some of the latest versions, is an autosave feature. So should you have a crash, we can go ahead and select OK, and we can name our restore. As you can see, I've got about 120 of them. So if this happens, it's okay. You can just rename our file and simply select Enter, and that will reopen to that point where we've crashed. So an autosave feature inside of iClone can really save you should you put a lot of work or time into something and forget to save on the front end. So always remember to save your files, and if we zoom our camera back, we're right back to where we were. So now we can go ahead and double-click on our gorilla to make him the active asset once again. And what I want him to do is I want him to start with his transform keyframe or his root keyframe, and we're going to go ahead and pull him down just a little bit using hotkey control plus down arrow. And then I'm going to have him go ahead and move forward. Now as you can see, our character here, if I don't make them interact, has a little motion where he's backing up slightly and then squirming, and then he gets slammed to the ground. Now we're actually going to have this slam occur with the slam of the actual gorilla's motion, and in order to do that, I'm going to show you a very quick way that we can get this character interaction to flow together. So I want to again select my castaway avatar here, and you can see now his motion is here with the motion, our Mocap Chokeslam on our motion track. And I just want this nice little wiggle here to correspond with when he's actually picked up in the air. So we'll trim just a little bit off the front by again breaking once again, and then right click delete, left click and drag to drag this over. And we've got these characters now aligned for timing with their character motions. You can see there he goes up, and then that's where he's going to slam down. But we actually want him to do that. So in order to do that, we're going to actually create a constraint or a character interaction, plus we're also going to very quickly create a little bit more transform animation in order to make sure that our characters are reaching the point that they should for our shot. So we're going to go ahead and select play, and here where our gorilla is grabbing, what we want to do is we want to grab our castaway avatar, double click on him using our move tool, our hotkey W, and we can toggle on or off our gizmo for move using Control plus Q. And so you can see I can use my world axis move here to quickly determine exactly where he needs to be. And now when the gorilla approaches and he grabs him, we can see that he needs to be even further back, so we're going to drag that on our y-axis here. And so now we're getting close, there we go. And I want to scoot him up just a little bit because I want to make this as quick as possible for me to be able to actually put together for Previz. So here you can see the avatar is almost around the head of the castaway. So we can make a small edit to this as well by selecting our gorilla and making a edit motion layer edit, and we can do that coming from the modify panel, and we can select character animation, and we can select the edit motion layer tool. And what this does is allows us to choose a different pose for our character, and in this case we only need to have our ape kind of bent over slightly more. So what I can do is I can grab the node located at the top of his chest, use hotkey E for my rotation tool, and I can drag him down. Now also notice that we can utilize the human IK rig for pinning, and we can take the rotation pin off of our shoulders. That way when we bend our avatar over, his arms are going to follow suit. Okay, so now we've got his hands placed basically on the shoulders, and I'm going to get that a little bit more precise using the human IK rig by selecting the hands and using my move tool once again, or Hotkey W, and I can literally now offset my mocap based on the proportion of the avatar and the position of the avatar. So this is again very nice in order to work with a director to say, look, no problem, we can get the exact sort of character position and motion that you want, and also the camera movements that you want as well in order to interface with the director of photography. So our constraint that we want to create, because we actually want our gorilla to lift our avatar up, is very simple. We're going to go ahead and use our selection tool and double click on our castaway avatar here. And I like to use the scene manager because with character creator avatars you actually can select the shirt or the jeans or the hair, and if we come into our scene manager we can quickly select that entirely on its own, and we can right click this avatar in order to select our link. So anytime we want something to interact with another object in the scene and then cease its interaction, we want to use a link constraint versus a attachment, and there's a link versus attach tutorial that I offer for the reason why you do that. So we're going to go ahead and select link, and you can see that we have a square sort of crosshair icon that will appear in the viewport, and we're going to go ahead and left click once on the character's hand, and so now it will inherit the movement of that motion based on the position of the hand. So we can do a couple of things here in order to clean this up as well. We can, at that point where our castaway avatar is being grabbed, we can go ahead and select him and give him a transform keyframe, and I did that using Ctrl plus up or down, and then we're going to drag forward in time, and again I'm going to just kind of rotate him because his motion is corresponding with our other character motion that we've mocapped, and we just want to kind of position him in a better spot using rotation and move. And then if we also wanted to utilize the same level of offsets for our character for any of the positions, so for example his arm's kind of sticking out, we're going to go ahead and utilize edit motion layer once again, and we're going to tuck his arm in using rotation from the shoulder, and so we're getting a better character position here based on the way it should be and the way that the other avatar is actually interacting or grabbing. We can also do some other cool things like unpin our character's feet and then simply use human IK to drag those down or forward to straighten those out to give them a little bit more of a dangle or a wobble. So this is nice in order to be able to create that very quickly. But again, we're going to keep this foot contact on, and I'll show you why momentarily, because that's going to give us a little added bonus once our castaway meets his end with our gorilla avatar. So when he actually comes up and then is slammed to the ground, you can see that these foot contacts will actually come into play and they will slide across the ground as he is slammed. So we can refine the positioning of these more should we want to get a better character position, but for time constraints now we're just going to go ahead and work on our shot. So we do want to add a couple of other things, and that is some more foliage, and we can do that utilizing Speed Tree here inside of iClone 7 Beta 2. And one of my favorite Bob Ross moments that can occur inside of iClone is painting happy little trees, and we can do that using the drag and drop function out of the content manager, and then we're going to start gardening, and we're going to increase our size and number of our plants here, and you can see that a jungle can be created or approximated rather quickly utilizing this tool. And so now we have some foreground and background elements here, and this is going to make our composition much more appealing. I'm going to use escape to exit this tool, and I'm also going to grab some grass so we don't have such a flat surface on our terrain, and rough grass is nice for that. Again, just drag and drop. And of course we can adjust these here should we want to and make them larger or smaller or again, vary the size and number. And we've had another crash for our beta. It is a beta after all, not a problem. And we'll jump back in and show you exactly what our end shot's going to be on this particular camera movement, which is very important because at the end of the day, PREVIZ is going to be based on the character animation or the actor animation and solely based on the camera movement. iClone 7 is going to offer us a higher level of cameras for professional use than we've ever had access to before inside of a Aleutian product. And I'm very super excited about that because it allows us to interface at a higher level with both studio workflows and small team, large team productions. So we're going to go ahead and reopen that. And here comes our project. And we're going to take a look at creating our camera movement. And then again, we'll take a fast look at our output that we've created from the beginning of our webinar here, and we'll take questions over the last 10 minutes. So we've got our shot here, and what we really want to do is go back to those storyboards and determine exactly what our framing is going to be. So if we look at storyboard 1, we know that we're going to start at kind of a low angle, and our gorilla is going to approach and attack. So we've got that sort of established, but what we want to do is we want to come back over and into our scene in our camera. You can see that we now have very high-end film back solutions that are available to us in iClone 7 and the laundry list of those that are accessible. So on high-end film productions, you will most likely run into a small collective of these particular brands. So you have the Arri Lexicam, you have the Canon cameras. And if we scroll down, we also will find some other usual suspects such as the Red, Epic Dragon, and One brands, and then also our Sony cameras. So for this, we're going to go ahead and we're going to select an Alexa XT. And you can see that our fit resolution is going to be based on horizontal, but of course we can switch that to vertical should our shot call for that, or our director of photography call for that. Normally we're going to stay in that horizontal fit resolution. And of course our focal length is something that we can determine either by our presets here, but what we want to do is go ahead and switch to our camera and choose our angle. So now that we're on our camera, we're going to go ahead and back up and zoom. And I'm going to double click on my character in order to orient my camera to that. And so this is something that's closer to our actual storyboard here. So those look pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and scroll forward in time. You can see as he grabs him that, again, our storyboard is pretty close to that. So we'll take a look at storyboard 2. You can see as he grabs and lifts, he's going to slam him down, and of course our camera should be pushing in slowly for all of this. So here is our slam. And then by this point, with our avatar's action from our motion capture looking down, we want to go ahead and we want to create our camera move. So to do that, it's very simple inside of iClone. We're going to go back to our storyboard, so we know that as he's looking down, the camera needs to be here. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to zoom forward. And this is actually creating an instant keyframe for us. And so this is going to be more to our frame. And if we go ahead and select play, you can see as he looks up, we're going to go ahead and end up in this position. So here's our close-up. Now the beautiful part about this is the keyframes that we've created on our timeline are very simply edited. If we go ahead and select our camera once again, you can see that our transform keyframes are showcased here with our tabs. And we can go ahead and either edit or delete these keys should we not want that one there, because we know that as our camera is pushing forward now between our two keyframes, we're going to end up in that shot that we want. Now we can also add some quick easing to that, and we can do so by going to our keyframe, right-clicking, and then selecting our transition curves. Many of you will be happy to know that there will be enhancements made in this portion of iClone in the very near future. But for now, we have some simple curves that we have available to us for ease in, ease out, ease in and out, ease out and in, step and custom. So we're going to go ahead and select ease out. And that's going to have our camera come to a nice slow halt as we get to this frame. So we're going to go ahead and back up and again select play, and we'll review our character animation here in real time. So if a director says, hey, let's take a look at a different angle, an alternate angle of this, we can already set up a different camera by going to create, and I'm going to switch back over to my preview camera here at the top and just choose an entirely different shot. So let's go ahead and maybe come from a profile. And for this, we'll go ahead and set something up, something like that, and we'll create a new camera. This is going to give us all of our camera options here. We're going to go ahead and again select our Alexa XT. And maybe for this, we'll change our focal length a little bit. Maybe we want all of our action to kind of be in frame. And now we can go ahead and select play on this. And we can view this from an alternate angle. And of course, create some more character camera animation by just zooming in and ending up on the frame that we want. Again, all of this is editable via the timeline, and we'll talk more about in future sessions how we can activate other things like depth of field and really enhance our shot by picking the target for our focal point, utilizing some other things like camera paths in order to get smoother or more refined camera movement. And at any given time, we can always use our camera switcher here on our timeline, which is another one of my favorite aspects, by right-clicking the switcher track, selecting our camera list, and we can actually toggle through our camera. So if we wanted to start on our first cam, we can go to that, and then maybe as he looks up, we allow him to stay on that for a second, and then as he moves out with our character motion for our previz, we can take our alternate camera angle that our director may want and switch to that angle instantly in real time and review that. So why choose iClone for professional level previz, pro level previz? Because we can do all of this inside of 30 minutes, an hour. When you're talking about dealing with large studios, large teams, and projects that are very demanding for both the creators and the animators and the producers and directors to collaborate, speed, agility, and compatibility is going to be very important to you, and that's why you should choose iClone in order to do your previz and post-viz work. And I hope you guys have enjoyed our pro-level previz webinar for the evening. We'll go ahead and open it up for questions now. We've got about 5 minutes left.
All right, thanks for that, James. That was awesome. Now we're going to turn it over to questions from you guys. So if you have any questions, we will put it in the GoToWebinar panel there, the questions panel, and either James or I'll be able to tackle any of those questions for you guys. We do have a couple of them already here. So the first one comes from, let's go up to the top here. William just says hello from Northwest Indiana. So hello to William from Northwest Indiana. I guess it's evening for you there as well. Question from Jeffrey James asking about relative to storyboarding. This one's for you, James. Relative to storyboarding, couldn't studio artists and creators save time just by storyboarding directly into iClone? Screwing around Absolutely. With drawing seems
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a great point. So going back to the visual communication tool, you literally can do all of your pre-visualization work inside of iClone solely. Absolutely feel free to do that. The reason we showcase the storyboards is that in most cases, when you walk onto a production, when you walk onto a team, because you'll have compositors, maybe concept artists that are providing this level of art. You might have modelers and designers that are working on the rig themselves. So you might not be in control of everything that is going into the scene. Your job might just simply be tasked to animate and to pre-visualize every bit of that. Should you have all the content that you need, then absolutely feel free to jump into iClone and start pre-vising right away.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's kind of what I kind of feel as well. When I do my productions, I don't really mess around with storyboarding. I think storyboards are kind of, at least in my experience, I guess, a lot of larger productions and maybe productions that use the more old-fashioned methods, use the written or the drawing boards and stuff like that.
Let me tell you why. storyboards are commonly found, though, for some of the productions I've been involved with. Stunts, okay? If this were a real-world previz example, we might actually be working with a real gorilla, okay? So in order to set up shots that you cannot kind of previz in any other way, stunts that involve maybe car accidents or things like that that are very high cost in production, okay? Because again, this is not just us sitting at home with iClone. This is talking about the pro level where we're interfacing with lots of different teams, lots of different collaborators. And you may say, hey, it's $50,000 for us to get this gorilla on set for a week. We have to know exactly what we're going to do. We have to know exactly how we're going to interface with the animal trainer. We have to know exactly how we're going to get that into the shot as the director of photography wants it. So when you talk about pro level, you're talking about things that cost a lot of money to produce. So when you're dealing with animals or stunts, this is a really, really great way to get a low-cost solution visually communicated over to the directors and producers.
Cool. Yeah, good answer. Next question here comes from Dan, asking if there will be a Mac version of iClone. We get asked this pretty much daily, I guess, Dan. Currently, there's no plans to produce a Mac version of iClone. However, it's possible in the future, but not for iClone 7 at the moment. So just a quick answer for you there. The next question, again, is from Jeffrey here. He's talking about when you were lining up the mocap with the mocap actor, asking about if all that effort was because of the need to intersect the animation with real-world filming. So when you were lining up the actor in the mocap with the actual real actor, with the video in the background there. Hey, James? Oh, might have lost James.
Seem to be experiencing a little bit of audio breakup with you here, Kai. Can you hear me okay here at the end?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. Just one more time, Jeffrey was asking about when you were aligning the mocap up with the video. Can you hear me there?
I can just barely hear you. It's actually chopping up. If you can, please just provide any other questions in the Skype queue, and I'll go ahead and field those if you can hear me okay.
Okay. So...
Oh, now you're back.
Okay. So, yeah, Jeffrey was asking about when you were aligning the mocap actor and the background video with the actual actor in iClone.
Yes.
So basically, is that related to basically if you're going to be putting it into a real world film, the reason you're doing that?
Yes. So basically, if we're going to align that, it's basically just to review the witness camera to know whether if you're getting a one-to-one performance through the mocap solution itself. So when we take a look at that, we can note, yes, we're actually getting exactly what we want from our direction that we're giving to the live actor, but also in the reaction that we're getting from our actual avatar data. So witness cameras are very, very helpful in that regard, and I'd strongly recommend that if you're going to go to a pro level, that you definitely utilize a witness camera just in order to make sure that you're getting what you want out of your actor's performance.
Okay, cool. We have one more question here from Frank talking about how he's asking how actively are producers and directors looking for previz artists who are fluent in iClone. He's asking, is this a position that you've created due to your unique ability and background, or is there a general demand?
There is a general demand. Previz and post-viz, and what post-viz is also a way to do this after films have been shot, where you might be adding in CG characters such as monkeys or robots or creatures, things that don't necessarily exist in the plate. But yes, a higher level of demand is definitely being seen in the field for iClone animators to fill this sort of need. There are companies like Hilly and Third Floor that all they do is previz. This is pretty much a portion in Hollywood that is a step that is taken between the animatic and the storyboard process in order to give a better idea of what the shot selection will be and what the actual director of photography will be available to do. Because if we tell them, hey, we're using the Alexa cam here, we know that you're shooting with the Alexa cam, we know you're at a 35 millimeter lens, and we have all of this real world camera data, which is tech viz, okay? So there's previz, tech viz, post viz. So iClone is a strong asset for all of those things, because for previz, we can conceptualize. For tech viz, we can give them the actual technical data for the cameras that they're going to require. And for post viz, we can come in on the back end and we can lay in those plates in the background just like we did with our actual mocap video in this demo.
So how much were Halon and Third Floor charging for their services?
without discussing, behind the closed doors rates, I mean, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars for minutes of footage.
Right. So you can see there's a kind of a big industry in just previz alone, and iClone allows you to provide that service for dimes on the dollar pretty much.
Sure. I mean, we've created 5 seconds of usable footage pretty much instantly. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars for minutes of footage. So you can do the math. It's definitely a viable source of income for iClone artists for sure.
Awesome. Okay. Next question I think I can take care of. It's Jonathan asking if there's a white paper that shows the difference between mocap devices and what setup is needed to use the devices. Now, I don't think we have any white papers that specifically talk about mocap devices, but when you do purchase that plugin, there's definitely instructions included on how to use it. James, maybe you can let us know if there's any further white papers or anything like that regarding the mocap.
Sure.
That you
there's a tutorial that you can find on YouTube that is actually me showcasing how to set up your Perception Neuron mocap suit and interface that directly with iClone. It's a very detailed step-by-step instruction where you can see exactly how we create this sort of interaction with that particular suit and how we place the sensors, where the proper placement for your actor will be, and how to get the best result from your calibration. So it's a 4-pose calibration for this suit, and it's a very, very simple setup. You're only about 15 minutes from out of the box to animating. So again, in terms of speed and ability to provide quick feedback that is actually useful for the characters and the producers and directors involved, I highly recommend utilizing inertia-based mocap suits because you have motion capture from head to toe.
Great. Question from Chris here. He says he has the Perception Neuron mocap neurons, but he doesn't have the other suit that the actor had on. And he's wondering, what is that suit and is it necessary?
That suit is actually just used, let me just try to bring this up here 1 second. That suit is actually used for tracking. So that's definitely not part of the Perception Neuron suit. That is only for our purposes on large-scale films. So you'll see that from time to time, and that's called a fractal suit. Definitely not necessary for Perception Neuron. You can feel free to utilize anything.
Okay, question from Jonathan Webb asking, is it possible to adjust the collision of the characters so they don't break through each other's meshes?
Sure, absolutely. So that's something that you would do based on your edit motion layer keyframes, and just utilizing that in your transform position keyframes. That'll be the best way for you to eliminate any sort of collision or unwanted interaction between the mesh.
Great. Okay. So Robert asks, is there more detailed tutorials related to the material presented today? Now, I think you just mentioned that one tutorial that you have created in regards to the Perception Neuron mocap.
Yes. There's definitely a lot of tutorials out there covering many of the aspects that we went over in the webinar today. And we definitely have specific ones for Perception Neuron that are located on YouTube for mass consumption. And you certainly can find a wide variety of tutorials, including some produced by myself and yours truly with Mr. Kai at the helm of those that are Reallusion-based tutorials that will cover a lot of the fundamental stuff that we kind of breeze through tonight.
So what's your YouTube channel there, James? Just
you can find my YouTube channel at just my name. It's just James C. Martin.
That's all in one word?
Yep. It's a very quick way to find me there. And let me just kill this crashed movie editor here. And let's see here. There we go.
While James is doing that, I have a question from Don asking about, is there a way to export iClone camera paths for use in other software? Now that is... Yeah, that's something we're developing right now. That'll be, I think, available later this year, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. And yes, absolutely. So in iClone 7, you're going to have the benefits of true pro features. And you can find here in our file, if we go to export, you can actually export cameras out of iClone 7 and also export to FBX. Also, Alembic will cover a lot of that as well. So if we wanted to take a camera path out, and another nifty trick inside of iClone, that is if we create a camera movement such as we did tonight with our keyframes here. So we just used 2 keyframes. But if we wanted to take that a little bit further, let me show you a great trick in iClone that I absolutely utilize a lot for camera paths. It can literally drag a box and highlight both of my keyframes, right-click for my camera, and convert to camera path. So this is something that we'll be adding in inside of the iClone 7 feature set, and you can do this normally in iClone 6 now. So as you can see in the beta, in this particular module we don't have that, but in iClone 6, if you right-click and scroll down just below transition curve, you'll see that you can actually convert any set of points to a path. So if we maybe added a third here, there we go, and now right click, and it'll be directly under that in iClone 6 is where you'll find that. You'll see that also in iClone 7 coming up.
All right, quick question from Marcel here, asking about, oh, actually, did you want to show your YouTube channel before we move on? Just got a couple more questions.
Sure. So there's a lot of examples here on my YouTube channel. So YouTube, and you can just go to James C. Martin, and you'll find that I'm going to be this guy. So none of these guys, pretty common name. But you'll see here that I utilize iClone for a variety of different things. Also, if we look at all videos, there are over 85 old school iClone tutorials that cover a lot of the fundamentals here. And then there's quite a bit of iClone showcase that we've done, utilizing things like the 360 rendering, taking models out to tilt brush, lots of just different character animation examples, lots of different styles, even some of the stuff we've done with VR video games. So iClone definitely has a lot to offer, and you can see that in older versions, there was really a lot of tutorials produced that still cover a lot of the fundamentals. So you'll find that here on my channel, all for free, all ready for you to mass consume.
All right, yeah, definitely check out the tilt brush videos there. I can personally attest that they're pretty awesome to look at. James is also a painter and a traditional artist as well, so he does a lot of that stuff in tilt brush. Pretty cool stuff to look at.
A lot of interesting ways to utilize your iClone library for sure.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So next one we have Marcel asking about will iClone 7 have multiple relative stackable levels of motion layer adjustments versus one track?
Ooh, good question. I will say this. You'll see in iClone 7 a higher level of degree of editing character motion. I will not say that that's going to be in the form of multi-track. Okay, and you should probably be looking around the middle of the year for some enhanced motion editing capability to be given to all iCloners out there, including myself, that I've been waiting on for a long time. So I think you're going to be very pleased with the abilities that iClone 7 is going to give you in terms of character motion, but you will not see that in multi-track form. You will see it in other ways.
That's right. We got a lot of really good upgrades to our motion systems that are going to be integrated probably the middle of this year. So
Kai and I have been demoted under gag order.
Wait for can't share too much.
You will be very happy.
Yeah, the multiple motion layer tracks, that's also in a possibility in the future there as well, but can't say anything about it right now. Now let's go on to a couple more questions here. Philip Martin, just a quick question. What's the best mocap file format for iClone, BVH or FBX? What do you think, James?
I'm going to say FBX. It just gives you higher level of versatility, and you're going to be able to interface with other things very quickly. For example, if we wanted to send this rig out and take this out for use, we could do so by selecting our character and then editing in 3D Exchange or editing in Character Creator. For this example, we'll go ahead and we'll edit or we'll send our rig over. And actually, we don't have that feature inside of the beta right now. But in iClone 6, you'll find a button here that allows you to send your rig over to Character, 3D Exchange from iClone and Character Creator. And then, of course, you can always come down and inside of any motion that you've created for your characters. A very cool aspect that iClone's had for a couple of versions is the Collect Clip feature, which we can literally right-click, and you can see that we can add motion to our library, and in the full official release you'll also see that we'll be able to send that motion to 3D Exchange the same way that you do inside of iClone 6 currently, and that allows you to take that rig and the motion over and then export as an FBX for use in anything else, and it's also, in my opinion, the best import.
Right on, cool. All right, maybe just one more question. We have a few more questions, but I'm just going to kind of cut it short here since we're about 15 minutes over time. So if you guys have any other questions that you want to ask me or James later, you can email me at kai@reallusion.com. That's Kai at reallusion.com. I don't know if you want to plug your email there, James, or I can forward stuff to you.
You can, feel free to contact me directly. It's pretty easy to remember. It's Jimmy iClone, all one word, at gmail.com.
All right, there you go, folks. Jimmy iClone at gmail.com. You can contact James for further questions. Let's see here.
One final. It Jimmy June, but it was already taken.
Oh, Jimmy, yeah, okay. All right. Don asks about the camera export. One final question here. Can you also export or import a camera path? Can you import a camera path?
Able to import cameras and camera paths from external tools in iClone 7, yes. That is something that is going to be a new feature set that allows us to share our Maya cameras, our Cinema 4D cameras, things like that, where you're going to be setting those up in an external tool and bringing those into iClone to utilize all of these cool feature sets along with your real-world camera movement from your other tools. So yes, that is coming.
Right on. Yeah, Don, we get a lot of questions about, you know, even in the last couple of years about people wanting to import and export camera paths and scenes and everything like that. So we've kind of like taken that really into consideration, and we're working really hard to develop all these new things for iClone 7 for you guys. You know, it's a hard process, but we've got a lot of smart dudes in the engineering department working on it, thankfully. Ever increasing, ever growing department of engineers, you know, working crazy hours to bring iClone 7 out for us. But yeah, that's about it. That's about all we have time for in this webinar, I think there. So again, guys, email James or Jimmy iClone at gmail.com and Kai at reallusion.com if you have any further questions. Don't forget to fill out the survey again. The survey is going to be sent to you via email, and you'll get a $10 gift certificate for the content store if you fill that out. And I want to thank everyone for attending. Thank you to James. This is our first pro-level webinar, hopefully the first of many. I think a lot of people enjoyed it from the comments that I can see already here. So yeah, thanks, James.
Not a problem. Thank you, Kai, as always. Try to stay warm up there in Canada, and I'll do the same while I'm in Michigan this evening.
Right on. And wherever you guys are in the world, yeah, stay warm if it's morning time or evening time, not sure. But good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are. And that's our webinar for today. So we'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks again for your time, everyone.